What is the number one question that you get from parents when you're giving a talk strictly to parents?
Everyone wants to know when I should give my kid a phone or when I should give my child this or that social media account. And so in those situations, it's always a case-by-case situation. What I would say is that evaluate your child if they haven't violated your trust. And it does seem truly that most of the peers have a device. Maybe it's time to give them a device. Maybe use software in order to monitor it. While we're talking about it, I'm going to go ahead and mention that I'm a big fan of Circle Plus as well as Bark. They're very granular in terms of the reporting features and the ability to lock down and monitor and allow or disallow this many minutes on this phone, that many minutes on that tablet. I can shut down the internet at 10 p.m. for the younger sibling, but not for the older sibling. I can make sure the younger sibling only has 35 minutes of Minecraft or Roblox or TikTok or Snapchat, etc. By the way, I don't have a relationship with any of these companies I recommend to you. I've just evaluated a lot of software, and I want to recommend what I think is the best. There are definitely other solutions which some of the audience members are using, and hopefully they're meeting those needs.
When you're meeting with a group of students, what's the one thing you want them to know before they walk back out the door?
I want them to know that it is hard growing up, and we try to be perfect, and we try to be well-liked, and we try to be validated and affirmed and get attention and affection in all of these ways. But everyone's fighting a hard battle, and everyone is insecure on some levels. And so if we realize that, then hopefully we're kinder to them and we're kinder to ourselves, and we just focus on what we can control, which I think is getting good grades, being that decent human being, helping out at home because that matters so much, and then also focusing on your future. Because middle school, high school, we think it lasts forever, but it's such a short portion of time. And after it, your world truly does open up if you become comfortable with yourself and have developed various sorts of skills.
Now, question for schools. What do you think schools get wrong when it comes to solving some of these challenges?
I think some of them focus on a punitive approach. And I think that many times the aggressors are struggling as much as the victim, the targets in many ways. So we need to come alongside the aggressors. Plus, I would say that schools, and by the way, this is a question related to resources. If a school has resources, I hope they focus on school climate, which are elements such as connectedness and belongingness and peer respect and school safety and school spirit. Some schools you walk in and it's just a happier environment because the school has the margin and the ability, and everyone's bought into the fact that we're going to make this a place that is filled with love, filled with care, filled with excitement about learning. In those situations, in those environments, I apologize, you have much less behavioral problems and you have much higher academic achievement. So school climate is where it's at.
Excellent. Josh, I know you have a question.
I do. So Samir, are there any platforms based on your research and based on your interaction with them that are better at monitoring some of this, or it's harder to have cyberbullying take place on certain platforms other than others? And if there are, what are those platforms that maybe do a better job?
Good question, Josh. What I would say is that there was more unevenness a few years ago, but since Congress has called a few of them to the mat, many of them are very sensitive about making sure that they've got parent safety centers, tools available within the app, etc. So plus I work with a number of them and I help advise to make sure that they're doing their part. With all of that said, I am not a fan of anonymous apps. There's a handful out there, and unfortunately, if you're able to hide behind a screen name or be able to post and comment anonymously, it's going to lead to more negative than positive. I always tell everyone that, look, you might be enjoying this and you might think that it's a fun gathering place to talk about the latest rumor, but it's going to devolve into chaos and frustration and sadness once you're targeted, which often happens in time. Not a fan of anonymous apps. I don't want any youth spending time on them.
Great, thank you.
You know, so much of what you were talking about from the parent aspect about parenting kids nowadays reminds me of some recent speakers we've had. The author of the book, Never Enough, Lisa DeMoore, on the emotional lives of teens, about this power of mattering and how important it is to make them feel like they have something to contribute. And I loved your reassurance around that. And also there's the importance of validating and feeling, being empathetic. And it's not about preparing the road for the child, but preparing the child for the road. And certainly everything you said about sharing stories of resilience of your own family as an inspiration for compassion for others, I think that's really valuable. What do you think is the most challenging audience that you speak to when you do these presentations? Is it toughest talking to teachers, parents, or students?
To be honest, I think it's toughest talking to law enforcement, but maybe there's a good reason for that, because when I train law enforcement, they have seen the worst of the worst. And oftentimes they have a very punitive mindset because, they just want the aggressors to be dealt with and they want that behavior to stop. But I'm more of sort of like a whole child type of person where it's like, let's just come alongside of them. Something that you said, Gil, that reminds me about how in some situations when you identify an aggressor, let's say at a school, and maybe everyone thinks that it's the bad kid and they've been labeled in that way. We want to make sure that it doesn't become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so in those situations, can we perhaps give them various sorts of leadership responsibilities? Can we put them in charge of this event or this initiative? Can we get them to personally mentor or shepherd some younger kids? And in those moments, they will see that someone believes in them and they sees that they have something to contribute. And I bet that actually takes them off that delinquent pathway and onto a proper pathway of healthy behaviors.
So you've been doing this for a long time. What has surprised you from when you came into this world doing research on this topic and to where we are today?
That's an interesting question. Just give me a few seconds to think about it. I think one of the points that I shared earlier about how youth, for whatever reason, they're still so nervous about reporting, which also means that they're nervous about confiding in many adults. Yes, they might talk to a parent, but I bet that it took them a lot of mustering up a ton of confidence to do so. And so if there's one major takeaway from this talk, and hopefully there's a few, but one of them would be, let's figure out some sort of way where we, from now on, we have an open line of communication. You trust me, I will show you that I'm worthy of that trust by coming through for you, by validating your voice, by asking you what you'd like to see happen, by staying calm and rational and not freaking out, and us working together to arrive at a mutual solution.
Now, you've alluded to some of this before, but I'm going to ask you, you are in an elevator and you are going up to the top floor of a high rise, and your first ride is with a student. What do you want them to know about this topic? A high school student.
Sure. What I would focus on when it comes to the high school student is they're in a privileged position because their world is about to open up to them. And these 4 years, let's say, are so key to set them up for success. How are they spending their time? Hopefully they're not wasting their time. Hopefully they're not chasing popularity if that's not something that naturally is coming to them. These moments are so special. And I would share the same advice to someone who's single and longing to be in a romantic relationship. Use it for good. Use it to your advantage, because once you're in a relationship or once you're in college and once you're an adult, life happens very fast.
Now your second ride is with a parent. What do you want them to know?
I would first convey to them that I know how hard it is, because many parents wonder if they might be the only person who hasn't got this figured out. And then secondly, I would convey to them that, look, there's help to be had. Have you reached out to other parents and had conversations? The school, the PTA, maybe GPS, maybe me. I would give them my card. I would say, look, I'm here to help you. I know what it's like to feel alone and helpless. And so just know that there's resources, there's strategies, there's solutions. You don't have to feel alone.
Exactly. And now you're in an elevator ride with Josh Chambers, but he hasn't heard your talk. So the school administrator, what do they need to know?
I would just ask him, does he have enough resources, and can he continue to drum up resources to help all of the teachers and educators at all of the schools he supervises when it comes to developing soft skills? I know that they're focused on standardized tests, and I know that funding is often dependent on how well they do. But if we can focus more and more on resourcing schools with the curriculum, with the personnel, which again includes more hires, to focus on soft skills, such as empathy, such as resilience, such as moral development, etc., then we'll have less behavioral problems and more academic achievement. But here's the cool thing. I bet Josh already knows that and is exhausting himself to make that happen.
I just have to ask this one last question. What do you think is the biggest mistake parents make in trying to solve these issues?
I really don't like setting up monitoring software without letting the child know, because that kills any open line of trust that could ever happen. You're invading their privacy. We have to remember that when we were a teenager, we wanted to grow in independence, and that required us to have our space, whether it's our conversations with our best friend on the phone, whether it's what's under our bed or in the closet, etc. We wanted our parents to slowly but surely give us more and more freedoms and trust us, and hopefully we don't violate that trust. And I feel like when you surreptitiously monitor their activities without letting them know, it really does undermine and cripple any sort of openness that could happen.
I circled 3 times every time you mentioned how the relationship is key. It really is everything, isn't it? And when they're not with us, that's all they take with us is that relationship that we built. Well, I think you touched on everything. Josh, I know you want to join me in saying thank you. I'll turn it to you for a minute to say goodbye.
Sure. Thank you very much, Gilda. Samir, thank you very much for a great talk. This is obviously something that both as an educator and as a parent is near and dear to my heart. I love the fact that your message really is one of it all starts with relationships and the positivity and trying to build empathy in the world and finding ways to use this technology appropriately. Again, thank you very much. And I know, as a parent, you've given me a lot to think about today.
This is where we go hug the kids. So we'll go do that. Okay.
I love that.
Thank you so much. Can't wait to
Thank
have you
Gilda.
back.
Thank you, Josh.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
All the best.
Take care.